Welcome back to Clarity Convos for Wedding Pros podcast. I'm your host, Aislinn, and today we have another special guest, and I'm so excited because I was on her podcast a few months ago, and it was such a beautiful conversation that I knew that I had to have her on my podcast. So today's special guest, we have Becky Hart. Becky, please introduce yourself. Let us know what we're doing here today.
Sure. Yeah. Thank you so much, Aislinn, for having me on. This is so much fun. I'm a wedding planner based here in Eugene, Oregon, in the beautiful Pacific Northwest. I've had my company Event Crush since 2012, which is pretty wild to think that it's been that long. I also had an event rental company for a while in there for about 4 years. And I am a new podcaster as well. So I have the Event Crush podcast for wedding pros that I started back in May. And I also have a mentorship program for new and aspiring wedding planners. So that is what I'm up to these days.
Love that. One of the things that I know that you have is a networking group for wedding professionals in your community, which I think is so cool that that's something you started. So it's definitely something we're going to be diving into today because our topic today is actually all about networking. So if you can tell me a little bit more about what this networking group is, because I want to hear about it.
Yes, absolutely. Yeah, networking is just such a huge passion of mine. So I founded the networking group. It's called Engaging Eugene. I founded it way back in 13. Shortly into my own business, I realized that there really wasn't any kind of, group get together situation for wedding pros in my area. And so I reached out to another florist and we had just been chatting about this for a while, like, hey, we would really love to just get together with other wedding pros and just build community and relationships. And so we realized that there was a need for that in our area and we just decided to launch it. So we started planning in 2013 and then our first official gathering was January of 2014. So over 10 years ago. And our first event, it was so incredible. We had 60 wedding pros there. And it was super low key. We just met up at a bar in downtown Eugene and just hung out. And it was such a blast. And we were like, okay, yep, people need this. This is, gonna be great. So yeah, that's how it got started. And now we do. So basically how it works is we do monthly kind of networking mixers, I call them. They're very low key. We meet at different venues around town. So I kind of start in the summer, planning out the year of events. So we run from October through May, because here in Oregon, we have a crazy summer wedding season. So, people are pretty busy during the summer. So we really try to keep it just during the off season. So we just had our first one back just last night, actually. We had our kind of return event, which was so much fun. There was about 35 of us. So yeah, during the summer, I kind of plan out all the different meetups, where they're going to be, pick the date. And then something I'm doing this year that I am loving and that I wish I would have started before is I'm bringing on a co-host for each event. So for example, the one this week, I brought on another planner and she basically worked to get our catering vendor and our drinks vendor. And she brought in a photo booth and some decor. And she really just managed that whole aspect of it because as you know, it's still a decent amount of work to plan these events and we don't charge, they're completely free to attend. The goal really is just to bring people together, to build community and just to form those connections in our area. So we've never charged anybody. They're totally free. And so with that, we don't have a big budget for doing anything crazy. So we're relying on people to kind of donate their time and their services. And we've, had amazing support over the many years. So yeah, it's been fun though to bring on kind of co-hosts for each event this year. So I'm excited to see how that goes.
I love that. It's so funny because I was a wedding photographer for 14 years. So I remember 2013 and I remember the type of networking that happened in 2013. I feel like it's the same at the core because people are people and we want human connection. But I feel like it's so different in that it almost feels like everything is a little bit more of a production now, to host, even if I was just oh, I want to host a wine and cheese night. That would be very different in 2015, which that's what I used to do a lot of networking versus if I was trying to do that now in 2024. So I love the evolution and also the heart behind the event that you've started.
Thank you. Yeah. And you're so right. It's such a different world now. I feel there's just so much more pressure to make everything aesthetic and perfectly curated, and it's like, oh, we can't just do a little get together. It's funny because last night the girl who was hosting next or like co-hosting next month's event, she's a photographer, and she was like, man, like I don't know how to one up this because Olivia did such a great job. She's like, dang it, now I have to like bring it next month. So there might be some like healthy competition.
I love that. Well, today I really just kind of want to dive into like different aspects of networking and kind of like approach it from a couple of different angles. So the very first thing I want to talk about is networking from like planner to planner. So I think this is such an interesting concept because a lot of times when we think about networking, if you're a photographer, a lot of times you're thinking about, oh, I need to network with a planner, or I need to network with a florist, or I need to network with a venue. And in reality, there's a lot to be like gained from networking with other people inside of your niche. So I would love to hear some of your favorite ways to network as a planner with other planners.
Yes, it's such a good question. I think it's so important because I think, the whole community over competition, I think we can just get it in our heads that like, oh, they're my competition. So I just, I don't really need to like network with them or have relationships with them. But the reality is, and I think we all know this, but like I can't do every wedding that comes my way. Like I can't service every, lead that I get. And so I want to have some great planners that I can refer these couples to, because I don't want to just be like, nope, I'm not available. Sorry, see ya. I want to be like, hey, thanks so much for reaching out. I'm not available on your date, but here are some other great planners that I know and that I trust, and I know they're going to take great care of you. And so I can only do that if I actually have relationships with these planners, because I'm not comfortable personally. I'm not comfortable sending them to other planners that I don't like have any experience with. And so I do a lot of networking with other planners, and I think that some of these, people might be like, "Oh, I don't know about that," but just take it for what you will. I actually something that I've started doing over the last couple of years is having other planners assist me at my own weddings. And so we have, wedding day assistants that are there for the full day of the wedding in addition to the lead planner. And so we just have a great group of local planners. And so I love just bringing them on to come assist me, because I know they already know what they're doing. It's easy for them to just jump in and like hit the ground running with it. And so it's been really fun for me to network in that way of like working with them. And we just kind of all like kind of rotate through, which I personally love. I can see people being like, oh, but then they're going to see how you run a wedding day, and what if they steal what you do? And I'm just not concerned about it. Like I think, we all have our own way of doing things, and maybe they do see something they like and they're like, "Oh, I'm going to try that." And that's totally fine with me. I'm just not about gatekeeping, and I think there's enough business to go around, and I think that we all are unique enough that even if we do have some similarities, like we're all totally different people. So some other things that I do, it's just like an Instagram chat group with local planners in my area. And so we'll just chat about like, people will have questions. Have you worked at this venue? What should I know about this? Questions about other vendors, or like recommendations for other vendors for their clients. And it's another place too for referrals. So if we are not available for a wedding, we can like drop it in that group chat and see if anybody else is available that we could refer. And then I love to just meet with other planners and like get coffee and chat about our businesses and just see like how things are going. Because again, it's one thing to network with other professionals in the wedding industry that aren't in your direct field, but like nobody really gets it like the one who's doing what you're doing. Like a photographer isn't
Yeah.
going to understand all the intricacies when I'm talking about, dealing with my clients and planning and all of that. So just being able to share and have that camaraderie with other planners, I think is really, really important. And then, as you mentioned, I have my networking group. And so I was going to say, for the first like several years, I was usually one of the only planners there. And that made me really sad, because we would invite, like everyone's invited. There honestly haven't been a ton of planners in my area. So I think that was just part of it. Like we haven't had a lot of planners. But over the last like 2 to 3 years, we've had this whole new like generation of planners rise up. And so they all come, and it makes me so happy, because I don't want to be the only planner there. Like I want to be able to chat with other planners. And so it's been really fun just kind of having this new generation of planners coming up and how involved they've been and everything.
I love that so much. There's so many things that like came to mind as you were speaking. And one of the things I was thinking about is a lot of times as a vendor, we look around and we think like, well, how do I network with that person? Like, how do I get it? How do I get in with that person? Like seems to be like the thing people like to quote. But then when you are the one who's actually hosting, you are the one who is building the table and inviting people to the table. It's such a beautiful opportunity for you to be in front of people that you never would have been in front of otherwise. Like one of the things I really loved to do when I was a wedding photographer, because we moved a lot, like throughout my entire career, I think we moved like 5 or 6 times. Every time I would move to a new place, I would host something that I would invite people to rather than waiting for me to be the person to be like, oh, I hope I get invited to the networking event or to the party. It's like, no, hey, I'm going to have a like my own networking event, my own like gathering and community, and like everyone's invited. And like, how beautiful is it that we get to do that for ourselves and our community? Like you said that like you like started this like group and like you now have planners who are coming to this and now they are part of like your social network where if you have a wedding that you need to pass off, you have someone to pass it off to. And like, how beautiful is that?
Hmm. Absolutely.
Yeah. One of the other things I wrote down was that some of my best weddings actually came from exactly what you're talking about. Like your list of planners who they like you can't take on the wedding. And so you give it to like one of these other planners and you say, hey, are you guys available? I trust you and I trust that you're going to take care of this person. And some of my very best weddings came from referrals like that. So I think that's so important to have and not be an island in your
Hmm.
community.
Right. 100%.
So, if you were giving advice to a photographer about networking, what would you say is the most effective way to go about it? What are some of your ideas for that?
Yeah, definitely. So there's a few things I would say. I would say to be consistent with it and just networking. It's not one of those like quick, like overnight fixes. It definitely is more of a longer game. And so I think just having that mentality going into it, I think it's so worthwhile and it's so worth the time and the effort that you put into it. But it definitely isn't just a quick thing. It's not the kind of thing where it's like, oh, I'm just going to go to this one networking event and then great. Like you have to be consistent. And so if you are, able to start attending networking events, I would just say to show up regularly and just start making yourself known and just showing your face at whatever you can. And yeah, just getting out there as often and as regularly as you can, which I know is hard, especially for like any introverts that are listening. I know that can be tricky. And so that's where I would say, like, just reaching out directly to, an individual vendor and just inviting them for like, it can be a virtual coffee chat, it can be an in-person grabbing a glass of wine or a cup of coffee, whatever sounds good, and just doing like a one-on-one situation like that, which also allows just for more of an opportunity to really get to know that person. It can be hard at the larger networking events to like really get to know people and you're like trying to see everybody. And so I think one-on-one opportunities are really wonderful as well. And then the other thing I would add to that is just following up with people. And I think that that's something that just generally gets missed a lot of the time. You'll make a connection at an event and you'll meet somebody or you'll go out to coffee with somebody, but then there's just like no follow-up and the relationship doesn't really go anywhere. So I think it's really important to then, yeah, just follow up with that person and be like, hey, I loved meeting you at that networking event, or thanks so much for meeting me for coffee. And it just kind of keep the conversation going. Because hopefully, the goal isn't to just go to coffee. The goal is to then hopefully have like a working relationship in the future that you can refer business and that kind of thing. So yeah, I just think that's an important piece that we sometimes forget about. So those are the couple things that I would say.
I completely agree with you on the follow up. I see it so often. It almost feels like a vendor will like have a one on one or a coffee date with like someone, and then they're just like expecting the other person to follow up with them, or they're
Mm,
expecting the other person to deepen the relationship. And it's like, you cannot expect it from the other person if you're not willing to like lead yourself in that moment and be the one to follow up. We actually like this was like many years ago at this point, but I kept a list of people that I would meet at networking events. So I would follow them on Instagram while I was like at the event itself. And then I had a
mhm,
list of people that I met that week. And I would make sure that like if I had a good connection with them, or specifically if we had like a warm connection where it's like, oh, this person introduced us, I would make sure to email them or make sure to like follow them on Instagram and talk to them on Instagram. I have so many incredible, beautiful relationships over the
Mm,
years because I dared to follow up. And I think there's like
right.
this like weird mentality of like, what if I'm bothering them? Or what if they don't want to talk to me? And it's like, well, you will never know if you don't try.
Right. Yeah. Oh, I could not agree more. There's a lot of room for a lot of us to improve in that area, I think.
Yeah, actually, I feel like this is a beautiful segue into the next question around as a planner, because like people put planners on pedestals all the time. And when in reality, it's a co creative relationship as a team. Like we all play our part on a wedding day. And I feel like a lot of people are like scared of planners. And,
Mhm.
there might be some planners out there that are scary, and that's okay. But I think the vast majority of planners are there to have a seamless, wonderful event as a team together. They want you to communicate with them. So, for you, Becky, what are some of the ways that other vendors have built connections with you that you really loved as a planner?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, I've had a couple of things come to mind. One is, I mean, I thought this was pretty unique, and this happened a couple of times. But I had a couple of different photographers reach out to me, and they sent me just a very like sweet, genuine email. And then they were like, "Hey, um, if you need any new headshots done, like I'd be more than welcome, or yeah, I'd be more than happy to do that for you." And so one of the times I ended up taking advantage of that. And so I was able to meet with her and she did headshots for me and she was super fantastic and just all, just for free, just because she wanted to like form that connection with me, which I just thought was like, wow, like so above and beyond, like I would never expect that. But I thought like, dang, that's a great way to get in front of planners or whatever vendor you're wanting to get in front of and just say, hey, do you, like if you are in a slower season maybe and you have some room in your schedule, if that's something that you could do, like that's just something that really stood out and set that photographer apart. That like I'm never gonna forget that. So, and I think the biggest thing, because obviously you don't need to go around offering everybody free headshots, but the biggest thing is just being genuine and making whatever way you're communicating with them, whether you're emailing them or sending a DM on Instagram, like nobody wants to feel like they're getting a copy and paste message that's being sent to 10 different planners. Like I'm just telling you right now, that is the worst. So however you can personalize it and make that person feel like you're the only one that they're talking to, that's just really important. So do some research on them. Don't just find them on Instagram and be like, oh, I loved your work. Like actually look into them a bit, check out their website, get to know them a bit before you reach out. And I think that will just go a long way, because anytime I get an email where I'm like, oh, this person actually, like, they've been following me for a while and they actually, like, they said something about like a recent vacation I went on, or like, oh, they actually kind of know what's going on. I think that's so cool. And I'm not going to like just archive an email or anything when I can tell that somebody is genuinely reaching out from like out of a good place in their heart. The ones that literally feel like it was copied and pasted and all they did was change the name, it's really hard for me to have any desire to respond to that, because I'm like, ooh, like that's just not it. So yeah, if just being genuine and making it heartfelt and personal will go a really, really long way.
I love that. I also think there's something to be said about when you are sending those emails of finding connection points. One of the things that I talk about with my clients, but it was also something I practiced when I was a wedding photographer, was how can I find a connection point so that we can deepen? So, like, I would make sure that maybe I have a friend who already knows this person, or maybe we've been in a networking event together, or maybe we've shot at a similar venue together. Whatever it is, like, find the connection points that you can. That way you at least have something to build off of. And one of the other things I thought was really cool was you were talking about headshots. I remember when I moved to Alabama from Florida, we actually did a headshot swap party. So like
Mm,
I had everyone over to my home, and it was actually around my birthday. So we had like a little birthday celebration, and like we had cake. And we had like our little like head shot studio set up, and everyone who came, and I think it was only like maybe 10 people, they got updated headshots, but then also I got my own updated headshots as well. And it was just so fun to do it in that way, because it wasn't just like an individual, like, hey, wedding planner, do you want headshots? Like I've never met you before. It was like, hey, like everyone come to my house. We'll have a great time. We're gonna have cake and we're gonna have headshots. And it was really, really fun. But that was also very genuine to how I live my life. So it felt very like good for everyone.
mm. I love that. That's such a good idea. I've actually wanted to do something like that, like with my networking group, like have a headshot day where everyone can come and get headshots and maybe we have like snacks and drinks or something. I think that would be so fun.
Oh my gosh, that sounds amazing. Like maybe you could also like be playing like really good music too, like in the
Mm-hmm.
background. And like you could have like a photographer who shoots like more like film and light and airy, and then a photographer who shoots a little bit moodier, and they can pick like who they want to work with. They like just walk up to
Yes.
the podium. That'd be so
Ooh,
much fun.
I love it. Okay. I'm going to have to start planning that.
Like casually writing it down.
Right.
So, are there any things that you do at networking events that you can share with your audience? Anything that, like, when you go to a networking event, and I know you host your own, of course, but like, let's say like a new vendor shows up or a new to you vendor comes to you. Are there things that you do at your networking events that you think would be helpful?
Yeah, for sure. So it's speaking from my point of view as the host, it's really important to me that everybody feels welcome and that I can like personally go up and greet everybody. Sometimes it's hard because I'm like in a conversation and then I literally see someone come in and they're new and I'm like, so I have to like I kind of like jump away and go greet that person because I just want everybody to feel welcome, especially like if it's a it's a new event you've never been. Maybe you're an introvert and you show up and you're by yourself and you don't know anybody, like that's really scary. And so I never want anyone to walk in feeling that way. So I want to be the first one to just be like, "Hey, welcome. I'm so glad you're here." And just kind of show them around and make sure they know like what's going on. And then maybe I can bring them over to that group that I was just chatting with and I can introduce them. And cause that just, yeah, that just helps. So if it was me, I know that's how I would want to be like introduced into a new networking event. So I try to do that. And just generally like, at any networking event, I try to meet as many people as I can. Of course, depending on the size, like if it's a huge event, I can't. But if it's like a 30-person event like we had this week, I really do make it a point to go up to every single person and introduce myself and just learn about them. And I think my biggest okay, two things. So my two kind of big things I would say is one, to get out of your comfort zone. It's really easy to kind of get in our little like vendor bubbles, with our vendor friends. And we just want to like stand around and hang out with our people that we know. But I think that that can be, there's just such a huge missed opportunity if we only stick with the people that we know and we don't get out of our comfort zones and just go talk to the people that we don't know. Like it's, some of my, best relationships that I have are because I just walked up to somebody and said, "Hey, I'm Becky. What's your name? What do you do?" So I think there's just something to be said for that, for not just like getting stuck in our little friender bubbles and just getting out and being brave and just going up to the person and introducing yourself. And then the other thing, just I mentioned before, kind of the genuine interest, but the quote like "interested is interesting."
Hmm.
So just, you know, asking people questions, like genuinely showing interest in their business, not just like, some people honestly like, so, some people are more of talkers and they just want to talk about themselves. But if you can go up to somebody and like just say, "Hey, I'm so and so, this is my business. Tell me about you. Tell me about your business. How long have you been doing this? How did you get into it?" And just learn about them. And you'll be so surprised, what you'll find out that you have in common with people. And yeah, I think that's just an important piece of the puzzle is being willing to, yeah, ask questions, get to know people, and get out of your comfort zone and not just stick with the people that you might want to stick with. And bring business cards or like some kind of digital business card. I don't know if you're familiar with Popple, but it's like a fun kind of digital business card. And like even Instagram now has the little thing where you can like scan it on your phone and it'll take you to the person's Instagram page. So some way that you can just directly connect with that person. I know you said earlier that you would like follow the person right then and there, like at the networking event. I do the exact same thing because I'm like, otherwise I'm going to forget and I don't want to. And this way I can like put a name to the face and the business. And I think that's a great practice.
Yeah, my little ADHD brain like would never be able to remember if I didn't do it right then and there to figure out like, wait, who is this person? How did I meet them? And I think that's
Right.
actually a really great point of like, instead of asking them to follow you, you go follow them. Like
Hmm.
if you're like standing there and having a beautiful conversation with Becky and you're like, "Hey Becky, like what's your Instagram handle?" And she tells you that it's the event crush.
Hmm.
Yeah. So like she's like, "It's the event crush." And I'm like, "Okay, amazing. I'm gonna pull you up on Instagram and like follow right then and there." And
Hmm.
then you could say, like, "I'm gonna send you a message later on so that you know that we met today." And like,
Yeah,
that's just such a better way of doing it than expecting them to follow you.
for sure.
I would love to hear, like, because like you just said, like, just go up to the person and say hi, like, just like, be brave. And like, it is, there are so many introverts in my audience.
Yeah, yeah.
I know how hard it is, especially if you know that person is like, maybe like charging more than you, or they're doing weddings at a venue that you want to shoot at, or maybe like you've heard really amazing things about them and like you know who they are. It's hard to go up to people like that. Like it could definitely feel a little intimidating. But at the
Mhm.
same time, like I tried really hard not to pedestal people. Like a lot of times I wouldn't know. Like I would just like go up and talk to just about anybody. So for me, there's not a ton of things that I can say that would be like, here's how to like calm the nerves, because
Mm,
for me it's just go take the action. But I'm
mhm.
curious for you, do you have any tips or advice or help that you can give someone if they're at a networking event and they're like, I'm in my little bubble, but I know that I want to get out of my bubble,
Mhm.
but I'm really nervous. Like what would you say to that person?
Yeah, no, that's a great question. I would say, I mean, if possible, before the networking event, if you have one person that you can bring with you that you do know, I think it can be good and bad. I think like I'm the kind of person that it would be really helpful for, because just having that like little bit of support to know like, okay, like at least I have this one person. So like if I do get stuck and I don't know what to do, I can like go find that person. But if you guys kind of come up with a plan in the beginning, like, okay, we're going to get there. Like we're showing up together and then we're going to like separate and we're going to go meet as many people as we can. But then we still have that like safe space. So I think that can be good if there is somebody. But if you are just showing up alone and you don't know anybody, I totally like I understand. Like that is super scary. And I mean, I have been there, and I mean I am an extrovert, but I'm like a weird extrovert. I don't know, because I get really shy when I don't know people. Like if I'm around people that I know, it's like, okay, great. But if I'm like in a room of people where I don't know anybody, I'm just like, yeah, I get really shy and I feel super awkward. So I understand the feeling. I definitely do. And I mean, I would say like go maybe like go grab a snack or like get something that you can like hold, or like, just have cuz I don't know, I just find that like if I'm like like doing something or holding something, it's like a little bit easier to go up to people. And then I mean, yeah, we already said it. Unfortunately, like you just have to get brave and go up to people, because hopefully, I mean, I would like to think that if you are just kind of hanging out on your own, that like somebody will come up to you. I think that that would happen, but I don't necessarily want you just kind of waiting around for someone to come up to you. Look for somebody else by themselves is probably the main thing I would say. Like, go find somebody else who is in the same position as you and just go talk to them and get it going. But if nobody's by themselves and it's all groups of people, like, you just have to go up to the group and just be like, hey, you know, can I chat with you guys? And they're going to be like, yeah, of course, get in here. Like that happened a million times last night at my networking event. I did it. I had other people do it. And every single time, like somebody would come up and there'd be maybe 4 or 5 of us chatting. And we're like, get in here. And like they just join the conversation and it's fantastic. So I also will say, I know that not everywhere I know that some areas, the networking groups might be a little more clicky. So I just like, I don't have personal experience with that, because our community is just so like welcoming and friendly. And I want to believe that everywhere is like that, but I don't know that that is the case. So yeah, if it is like clicky, I don't know. You just got to try. And there's got to be some people who are going to be happy to chat with you and that are happy to have you there. And you'll find those people. You know what I mean? Like we kind of naturally find the people that we connect with and that we gravitate towards. So, but it can be scary.
Yeah, I completely agree. I know how scary it can be. Like we had to move my company multiple times. I have been in multiple networking rooms where I don't know a single person and I don't have a friend with me and I didn't bring my husband as a buffer. So it's just me. And in those moments, one of the things I used to tell myself, and I don't know if I was like gaslighting myself, but this was definitely the thing I would say was like, you are just one conversation away from making a new friend. You are one conversation away from like possibly a really amazing friendship, one
Mhm.
conversation away from a new like connection that could be really fun. So why like sit on this side of it when you could be sitting on the other side and you've tried? I was talking to a client today actually, and I was saying confidence is a numbers game. The more you do it, the more you try it, that's when you're going to start to feel like more confident in it. So like
Mhm.
if you haven't tried to go up to someone and say, "Hi, my name is Aislinn. Like, how are you guys doing tonight?" Like, if you've never tried that before, yeah, the first time it's going to be scary. Second time, the 42nd time. But like after a while, it's going to just be kind of like a numbers game where you're just like, "Oh, I said hi and they didn't want to talk to me. Okay, cool. Gotta go.
Right.
Bye."
Yeah, so true.
So, one of the things I thought would be really cool to talk about today, because I know there's a lot of wedding professionals who listen to my podcast who are more established. Like they are like in that season where maybe they've been in it for 10 years, maybe longer. They're starting to think about like starting their own educational branches or starting their own networking groups, or really just becoming more of that like almost like leader of connection inside of their community. So I would
Mhm.
love to hear from you. If someone was wanting to start their own networking group because you have done that and you've run it for many, many years, what advice would you give to that person?
Yeah, of course. That's a great question. And I know like there are so many great groups out there, but again, like maybe they are more clicky and you're wanting to, provide a more welcoming atmosphere to people. Like if you're not finding a group in your area that is filling that need for you or that you see that there's a need for, then yes, like absolutely you should consider starting one. I think it's one of the best things I have done for my business for sure. Like I can attribute, so many of my weddings that I have booked, so many of my friends that I have made, I can attribute to the networking group that I run. So I highly, highly recommend it. So yeah, so some things that I would say to think about kind of the goals and the purpose for the networking group first. Are you wanting something that's more like niche for specific vendors? Like, are you wanting like, to just bring photographers together? Or are you wanting to do something more like what I do where it's kind of all wedding pros? And then what are you hoping to get out of it? Like, is the point really just to bring people together to build relationships? Or are you wanting to have an educational component and like bring speakers in and that kind of thing? There's so many possibilities when it comes to these networking groups. So just kind of think through like, what are you wanting to gain out of it? And then, think through like how often are you wanting to do this? Are you wanting to do once a month meetups? Are you wanting to do like twice a month or, once a quarter? Like there's again, so many options. And then are you wanting to do like morning coffee meetups or like an evening have a glass of wine kind of a situation? So just think through it, or like, or mixing it up. You can do a little bit of both for sure. But just realizing like it doesn't need to be anything crazy. You don't need to go all out with like decor and making it this huge party. Like we talked about earlier, it can just be a really simple gathering of like-minded people in the industry who just, want to get together and like share in that camaraderie and just build relationships. So I would say just start small and simple. Once you, kind of have an idea of what you are planning, I would also say to ask your peers. Like if you have other people, already in your network, see like what would they want out of a networking group? What would they be interested in and what would like excite them about it? So kind of getting that feedback from them I think could be really useful. And then usually the hardest part is kind of finding the venue to host you, but if it's, to start, you could literally find a coffee shop and then just go meet up there. It doesn't even need to be like the venue's closing to the public or anything like that. There's so many possibilities. So once you kind of have that figured out, then just start spreading the word. You can make like a Facebook group for your networking group. You can get an email newsletter started, collect people's email addresses, and then you can send them every month, reminders about here's our upcoming event and that kind of thing. So those are my tips for kind of getting started with that.
I love that. And yeah, I kind of want to like reiterate that it can be simple. So like
Hmm.
when I was hosting networking events, like they were not like a huge event. Like it would be like 10 people or less usually.
Hmm.
And like because I moved so many times, we just did this so many different times. A lot of times I would just host it at my house. So like
Hmm.
I very specifically remember when I lived in Orlando. I only lived there for 2 years, but by far it was the like deepest connections I had as far as a market goes, because I literally would invite people over to my house and we would do wine and cheese nights and we would have
Hmm.
deep conversations. And I didn't have like a formal, like it's every Thursday at XYZ time. It was just
Hmm.
whenever like we could all get together. And then I moved it further into, I can't remember what I called it, but we had coffee and donuts and it would be at my
Hmm.
house. And then I would pick up the donuts and somebody would bring the coffee and we would just have deep conversations. But I think it's important that if you are choosing to host a networking group or networking event, even if you're not calling it that, you have to host and make sure that
Mhm.
you're being a really good host and be like, not just like gracious, which is important, but also like make sure that you're making people feel comfortable.
Mm.
Maybe what you do is invite people that you know and then have them bring one person that you don't know. And then
Mm.
that way, like there's like a new people at the table, but it's not a like a space that feels uncomfortable. So there's a lot of different ways to do it, but I love the idea of starting small. And then, I mean, if you
Mhm.
want to host like a huge networking event, like please do. Like we need more good, fun ones out there. But yeah, I love the idea of if you want to do this, there are ways to do it where you could do it next week if you wanted to.
Mm. Absolutely. Yeah. Some of my favorite ones have been really small things. A local photographer, she did this little thing for Galentine's Day well, I guess it was this year in February. And she just invited, yeah, there were like 10 of us there. And it was just so like intentional and thought out. Like she, thought about who she wanted to invite. It wasn't just like an open call to anybody. It was like people that she thought would get along well together and that would connect. And it was just she like made dinner, like it was so sweet. So I love the smaller ones too. And again, I mean, it doesn't need to be anything elaborate. It can be coffee and donuts. Like it can literally be anything that you want to make it. And people like if you put the effort in to get it started and if you're a good host, like they're going to be so happy to show up and to just have that space to share and just to not because as you know, like we're so many of us are solopreneurs and we're working at home in our home offices. And so being able to get together with others and just share in like the struggles that we're facing in our businesses and to be able to like put our guard down. Cause I think on Instagram and social media, we're just posting like all these great things. And it's like sometimes it's really not that great behind the scenes. And you can't really, it feels like you can't share that with people. So being able to, yeah, just like sharing that and realized, oh, I'm not alone in this. Like other people are going through these same struggles that I am. And I had no idea because I never, sat down with others in the industry and realized that.
Yeah, one of the things that we did during COVID was I like was missing connections so badly. Like, and a lot of my friends lived in Florida and I lived in Alabama at the time. So like I couldn't even see them and I had no idea when I would see them again. We hosted it was like cocktails, like cocktail hour, I think is what we called it, but it was
Mm.
5 p.m. Everyone had their little glass of wine or their cocktail and we just like chatted. So like you don't even have to do these in person if you don't want to. Like you can literally host virtually if that feels like more aligned with your business and your brand.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. During COVID, we did a bunch of like Zoom networking meetings because we couldn't be together in person, but we still wanted to meet. So we just met over Zoom and yeah, it was great. So that's a great option too. And some people, they travel for, especially like photographers who travel all over. So maybe they don't have like a super tight local network, but they've just made connections with people all over the country. And so doing something more virtual could make more sense for them.
Yeah, absolutely. So, how can people work with you? Like, there's a lot of different ways that people can work with you, but I want people to be able to find you and follow you and connect with you. And then also, like, I know you have some really cool offerings. So, I'd love to hear more about those.
Yeah, thank you. I appreciate you asking. Well, the best place to find me would probably be on Instagram. So I'm at Event Crush over there. That's definitely where I like to hang out. I'm Event Crush on every single platform you can think of, Pinterest, Facebook. So any of those is Event Crush. And then my website is just eventcrush.com. Yeah, the main thing that I'm kind of, you know, getting out there right now is my mentorships for new and aspiring. So if there are any planners listening who are interested in just like kind of taking the next steps in your business, I would love to chat with you. So all the information is on my website. And I will say my website I don't know when this will go live, but it's in like a transition phase because I'm rebranding. So like my new website is up, but it's not done yet. So it may or may not look a little funny, but it's there. And
Yeah,
then
we'll make
also
sure it's in the show notes for you.
awesome. Thank you. And then, yeah, the other thing would be the podcast, which you can find. It's on any podcast player. It's just called the Event Crushed podcast for wedding pros. So I'd love if you would give it a listen, and yeah, I'd love to hear from you that way as well.
Okay, thank you so much for sharing your wisdom. Thank you for sharing like all of the fun tips that you gave our audience today. It means the world to me to have you here. And I'm just so appreciative that we got to do this, like both on my podcast and your podcast. Like it was really fun to like kind of like, oh, this is my interview. This is your interview. It's like so fun. So thank you so much for being here.
Of course. Yes, it's been a blast. And I really appreciate you just letting me come on your show as well.
All right, my friends, I will see you on the next episode. Everything is going to be in the show notes for you if you want to connect with Becky. I hope you guys have a beautiful day.